We have to talk about what's going on at the University of Georgia and Jalen Carter, who is ranked by most as the number one overall available prospect in this upcoming NFL draft. And this week is the NFL Combine. Well, we found out today that an arrest warrant has been issued for him for reckless driving and racing in conjunction with the crash that killed former teammate and recruiting staffer. So the teammate was Devin Whitlock and the staffer was Chandler LaCroix. LaCroix, she was driving, had a blood alcohol content of 0.197. But that's not the biggest news here because I remember when the story first came out, it was January 15th. They had just won the national championship. They've been out celebrating all this other stuff. And you're just like, oh my God, like your heart hurts for that sort of situation. And when it first happened, you know, like crashes like that don't typically happen in a vacuum. There's usually something else that goes along with it. So there was no need to comment on it. But today we find out that Jalen Carter and Chandler LaCroix had been racing throughout the streets, swerving through the turn lanes, opposite lanes of traffic. And shortly before the crash, her vehicle, which had four Georgia people in it, two staffers, two players, crashed at that it had been traveling at about 104 miles an hour. So this brings us to Jalen Carter, who reportedly left the scene before police or medical personnel showed up and then came back 2 hours later. So that was one of the questions that I had about the situation was like, yo, did he stay and help and all of this? So I felt initially like this was just tough for me because this is how we live in the margins in life. Because when you're young, you are an athlete, or even just when you're young in general, you feel like you're invincible, like you can't be touched, like nothing can go wrong. And you don't realize how close you really are from bad stuff happening to you. Like I remember me and a former teammate. I won't name his name. When I was living in Jacksonville, we would drive home every day. And we would be in our two SUVs driving like this down the damn street in Jacksonville. And we stopped like pretty quickly, but we did it a few times. And just to think that at that point in time, I was what, 21, 22 years old? And to think that we were that close to something actually just terrible and tragic happening, either killing ourselves or killing somebody else. And you don't realize that at the time. And no, and we would do it coming home from practice when nobody was drinking, anything like that. But that doesn't make it any better. It's a terrible, terrible decision. And but I understand how those things happen. I don't even understand how we even get to a point where we educate people the way they don't do this because when you're young you just make impulsive decisions sometimes and I feel bad for Jalen Carter. I feel bad for Chandler LaCroix's family, for Willock's family. It is awful, man. And it just really hurt my heart to see it. But then the conversation turned to Kirby Smart. Oh, Kirby Smart should have known. Like Kirby Smart, he's covering this up. What is he covering up? The police had not issued any charges or anything. Did he know Jalen Carter was there at the scene? Absolutely. Absolutely, he knew that they had been racing. What did you expect him to do? Make a public statement and say, hey, yo, Jalen Carter suspended from the team that he's no longer on. No, he was waiting on the police because he knew that at some point in time that this could come down. Oh, the University of Georgia is covering this up. No, it's not. It's just not public information. Like it's not their job to disseminate news. It is the news's job to disseminate news. So people pointing to Kirby Smart like this is some big cover up and he's supposed to do something. I'm like, what did you want him to do? He issued a statement immediately as soon as the charges came down. And that's what it is. But then the question is, what's going to happen as far as the NFL draft? Because I heard people say, oh, well, he should go back to school. That's not an option. Second thing is, they're like, well, I wouldn't draft him. Oh, so you're not going to draft. Mind you, he's charged with reckless driving and racing. If he gets some jail time, it would be minimal, right? And I think that could be misdemeanors as well. So now, what are you supposed to say to NFL teams? Don't draft the kid. He's the best of overall talent rated by most people. Oh, so you draft him in the fourth round instead of the first round? What, he's still gonna go out there and go play. If I were drafting, and I know that this sounds cold and callous, I'm taking him wherever I would ordinarily have taken him. And yes, I'm probably putting some stipulations in his contract. Like, bro, you ain't driving. Out of your own contract money, you are paying for a driver. Just that's just what it is. But and yes, it does present a pattern of, ooh, could this be a, a pattern of bad decision making? Possibly, right? So I do need to understand, are there other instances? But the reality is he's going to play in the NFL this upcoming season. He's not going to go undrafted because he is a fantastic football player. Had he been charged with something else, or potentially going to jail for some extended period of time, then absolutely. And I know that these are tough conversations for us to have, because people died and there were clearly bad decisions made in the process. But these are conversations that we need to have with our kids when they're in high school, college, all of this stuff, just trying to help them to understand that they are that close, that even though the majority of time everything is fine, but when it spins out of control, there's no way to stop it. Like when Chandler LaCroix was driving. Oh, it was a good time, everything was going well. And it, like, I wrote an article a long time ago that said it was all good 2 seconds ago. Like 2 seconds prior to when she lost control and hit the curb, oh, everything was fine. But then 2 seconds later, everything's gone. And that stinks and it sucks. And I feel bad for everybody involved. But something we had to talk about.